All right, welcome everyone. My name is Coach David. I am here with you today to talk about what juniors should be doing. Okay, our 11th graders, right? They're battling, they're going into their kind of like first semester finals right now or getting close to them. But parents, there's things that you need to be thinking about. There's also things that juniors need to be thinking about as well. Okay. Now, it is December 10th. It's just after 5 o'clock, right? If you guys can help me out by putting your student's grade in the chat, that really helps me out because I need to know who's coming so I can tailor the information that I am giving. Okay. But let us talk a little bit about what we're going to be doing today. So the first thing we always like to do is financial aid news, right? Then we're going to be talking about the class of 2027, how to prepare, how to be ready, and then are there any last things that as a parent I can do in 2025, right? The tax year that is critical for our student to make sure that we're on the best path to success. Okay. So for those that don't know me, I know it looks like I don't have hair right now because I'm wearing a hat, but I do have hair, right? That's me there, right? My name is Coach David. I'm a former law school and college admissions reader. I also have done financial aid for the last 16 years now, right? And I'm ready to help your family save money. Now, I'm sorry to announce that my birthday discount has disappeared. There's already 10 families that have signed up. Unfortunately, it is no longer available, right? It was a kind of once in a lifetime deal. I'm probably not going to do it again because I realized that after um, I'm not making any money, right? But again, more than just making money, I am also here to make sure that I am informing you guys about what is happening in the world of financial aid. Something bigger is happening. And I see a lot of 11th graders here, so thanks for putting that in the chat, right? I'm glad that there's a lot of 11th graders here because, well, this is exactly about you, okay? But for financial aid news, one new development that actually came up recently is that the US Department of Education is now taking it upon themselves to steer students to certain colleges, okay? Now, what is actually happening? On the FAFSA, which is one of the main forms that is used to see how much financial aid you get from any particular college, right? They are now going to mark certain colleges after you like or as you're submitting with like a yellow like caution like beware type of situation if that college seems to have lower earning potentials of its graduates than other schools or like against the state, right? Now, this doesn't necessarily change, right, if you can get aid or not, but it does change perceptions and like where students want to apply, right? Which I think is a little bit scary, right? So now a certain school, right, maybe on average their students make less, right? But a certain major makes a lot. That might deter students from going to that school. What that means for colleges, I don't know yet. We'll kind of see what happens, right? But you should take everything that the government does with a grain of salt because the data that is used is also state by state, right? Now, what does that mean and how does that affect things? Well, let's take a place where the median kind of like income is a lot lower. I live in California. Our median income is way high, right? But what if we were thinking about like North Dakota, right? Their median income is way lower, right? So if your college graduates are making more than the median income of North Dakota, they're not going to pop up as yellow. But if you're kind of like if you're in California and the median income of your graduates like 2 years after graduation is lower, it's going to mark it in yellow. That doesn't make any sense, right? So again, they're going to start doing this. What it means for your student, not anything really like there's no big influence on your student in particular, but for students that are less informed, for students that might not have as many kind of like access to as many resources, they might think that it's not worth going to a certain college because of that yellow kind of like highlighted bar. Okay, so something to keep in mind. Again, I'll try to keep you guys as updated as possible, but again, stay tuned. If there's any breaking news, I'll bring it up week by week. Okay. So before we get into the training, I always like to talk about our parent company, egelloC. Okay. While I help you pay for college, right? The first thing that needs to happen is that your student needs to get into college, right? So if you want to kind of book a 15-minute assessment with our college admissions advisors, you can text 949-775-0865. All you have to text is book. Our team will reach out to you to see if they can help you and if our program makes sense, right? You can also book it on your own through that QR code as well. All right. So let's get into it. Let's talk about financial aid for juniors. Okay. So Financial aid, first off, right? For a lot of families out there, I do see a lot of new faces here, right? Or new names here, right? So I'm going to kind of go over a basic overview. So financial aid is money given to students and families in order to make college more affordable. That is what financial aid is, right? But, right, there's a lot of different names of things that are within the financial aid category, right? There's things called grants or scholarships or work study, institutional aid, departmental aid, loans. It's given a lot of different names, but for me, there's only two types of money, right? There's free money that you never need to pay back, and there's loans. I know that there's so many people, right? They come in and say, you know what, my older one, they got a grant, they got a scholarship, and I tell them, stop, stop, stop. I just want to know how much free money you got and how much in loans you got. That's all I need to know because I don't care if it's called the ABC 123 scholarship or if it's called Sesame Street. I just care that it's free. So don't try to differentiate. If it's free, don't ask too many questions, right? But you need to separate it out into those two categories, free money and loans. Okay. Now, when it comes to the financial aid process, I'm going to go over kind of a brief overview of what it looks like. Okay. So the FAFSA is step one, and it should always be step one. Okay. This is the first step. Now, for the class of 2026, the class that's currently going through it right now, they actually opened up early. That's the first time it's ever opened up early, right? But I don't know what's going to happen with the class of 2027. Just over the past 30 days, right? I've seen the FAFSA change 3 times. The user interface changed, the questions have changed, and other things have changed. Okay. So there have been 3 major changes, right? Again, whether it's a website glitch or if there's something wrong or the question was wrong or whatever it is, there have been changes. So I don't know what's going to happen next year. Technically speaking, the open date is October 1st. Now, for some reason, social media, the news, all these different kind of sources made people panic this year and kind of like get anxious because they said, "Oh, you need to file fast because, the money's going to disappear." The money never disappears. Have you ever seen the government not be able to like have money there? No, they just print more. That's what's causing this great inflation we're having, right? But the money doesn't run out. There is so much money that is unclaimed every single year. I think the figure last year was $2.3 billion in student financial aid is never claimed on a yearly basis. Okay. That means over the last 4 years, it's $10 billion. Okay. So there's money out there. You don't need to worry about it. Okay. But the site you should be going to is studentaid.gov. There's a lot of websites that are very similar to this, but that are actually scam websites or scholarship websites where they ask you to pay $4.95 for a scholarship list. So be careful. It does need to be studentaid.gov. Now, I want to tell you what you need in order to fill it out. Okay. In order to fill it out, you are going to need your appropriate year tax return. For our juniors right now, it is 2025. A lot of you guys might be saying, oh my God, what do I do? I don't have 2025 yet. Don't worry. You don't need to fill it out until next October. Okay. But the one thing I will tell parents here is this. This is the one year that you want to try and get your taxes filed as soon as possible. I'm not saying that you can't get an extension and then flat file it in, July. But if you're one of those families that waits all the way until October and even pushes it out even further, this is not the year that you want to do that. We want to be able to have your taxes as soon as possible so you can come up with a strategy. Okay. So you need your tax return. The second thing that you need is your social security number. Okay. So for students, some students know their social security number, some students do not, right? But that is something that we need to know. And you need to make sure that you know it by heart. There is no chance it could be wrong. Okay. Now, parents, there's a lot of instances where you have to use your social security number to get a Home Depot credit card, to do this, to do that, whatever it is, right? So you're pretty familiar with it, but your student is not, right? So don't try to do it by memory. Make sure that you actually see it somewhere. Okay. And it being on your tax return does not mean that it's the right social. I've had students where their parents have thought their kid's social security number was one social security number for the longest time, and they realized later when they were doing some other things that social security number was actually wrong. Okay, so check your social security card. That's going to be the best way. Okay. You also need an email that you regularly check, right? Now, it must be unique to you, right? So student and parent can't use the same email address. They also can't use the same phone numbers. Okay. So the phone numbers need to be distinct, emails need to be distinct. That's what you need in order to kind of get things rolling. Okay. Personal information, other things, that's what you need to create your account. Okay. So just keep that in mind. The second step is the CSS profile. Now, I put in parentheses here, if required, because not all schools require this, right? One of the kind of schools that does not require this is the UCs, right? So if your school requires the CSS profile, right, you have to understand why this form is here, right? So the FAFSA is to see if you can get money from the federal government or the state, right? The CSS profile is to see if the college that you are applying to can provide you outside, or not outside, provide you funds from their own pocket in order to help you pay for college. That's why this form needs to get done. Okay. Now, one of the things and the biggest tip that I can give you today is that there are a lot of questions that are not required on your CSS profile, right? In the parent financial section, there's only 5 questions that are required. Do not, again, I repeat, do not volunteer any other type of information. Okay. Oh, sorry, just give me 1 second here. Sorry about that. Someone was knocking on my office door. Okay. But again, do not volunteer information. Telling them how much interest you made, telling them how much retirement funds you have, right? It's not about time to brag. It is time to try to tell them what not to do. Okay. All right. Now, moving forward. iDoc. This is another system that is, again, if required. Some schools use this, some schools don't. Okay. But the iDoc is the institutional documentation service, right? It's also run by College Board. This is where you turn in some of your tax documents, like your tax returns, W-2s, 1099s, also non-custodial parent waivers and forms, right? Again, not all colleges that use the CSS profile participate in this service. So beware, right? Now, the reason or the way that you can find out if your school uses the CSS profile or doesn't is you can go into your kind of search, right? Your Google search, and you can type in CSS participating institutions. You will get this long list of A to Z of every college in the United States that uses the CSS profile. And then you should be able to also see which schools require iDoc, which schools require other waivers, right? So you'll see the different categories and you can filter by them, right? Now, realistically, people are not deciding where to apply to college based on these factors, but it might be something that you're interested in looking at. Okay. Now, this is not the end of the story. It seems like, okay, well, step 1, step 2, step 3, right? It's not. Just because they don't need kind of like the CSS or waivers or iDoc does not mean that the college will not have additional requirements elsewhere, right? So you need to be looking everywhere. That's why even for our families that are in our program, I constantly remind them whenever I meet them, please be checking your applicant portals to see if they're asking for additional information. So whether it's applicant portals, emails, on the school's website, on this, on that, so on and so forth, you need to be checking. They purposely make it hard so that families miss a step and then lose out on financial aid. Okay. Once again, I want to make this clear. Every college has their own process. So don't be fooled and think it's a one-step process. Back when parents, you guys were going to college, it probably was a one-step process. The CSS profile didn't exist at that time, right? But nowadays, there's just so many different forms they want you to go through. It's like when you're buying like a new TV, they make you sign like 70 pages of things that can go wrong. Your TV can blow up, the battery might explode, your couch might catch fire on the left corner, right? It's like everything has to have like a form and a waiver, right? So there are a lot of things to fill out, right? Now, I also did want to give you examples of colleges that have their own systems, right? So right? In addition to FAFSA and CSS and iDoc and additional forms that they email you to fill out, USC has a separate system to submit your documents, check on your financial aid status, and then review your financial aid package. This is another kind of like portal you have to go into. Baylor has students do their FAFSA, and then upload documents through their own specific portal so they don't use CSS and iDoc, right? And then Princeton makes you do the FAFSA, the CSS profile, has you upload your documents into their portal, but then they also have another form, which is exactly a copy of the FAFSA that they want you to do again in their applicant portal. Okay. It is not easy, right? The process is not easy, and that's what I'm trying to show you guys. You need to be prepared. Okay. Now, parents of juniors, right? The tax year is ending, right? We are exactly 3 weeks away from the end of the year, right? So what can you do to help? Well, you can maximize your retirement contributions, contribute to health savings accounts, maximize deductions, avoid any last minute capital gains. So if there's any day trading parents out there, don't touch anything for 3 weeks, right? Defer any bonuses or discretionary income, minimize any student-owned assets. So if the student does have assets, you want to try to get rid of them this year, right? Before the end of the year. And again, use cash reserves if possible, right? Now, there are other things out there, and there's other companies out there that are kind of advising families to do different things, right? Do they work for a lot of families? No. And the reason is because there's always a cash flow issue. Let me give you an example. Okay. Let's say a family makes $250,000 a year, right? And they get advice, hey, you can buy a tax deferred annuity so that your income is zero by the end of the year. Okay. That's a great idea, actually, right? The problem is cash flow, right? So that family, in order to make their income zero for that year, would need to put $250,000 of cash into a tax-deferred annuity that they wouldn't be able to touch for another 20 years, right? The question becomes, can this family survive without any cash flow or any reserves? I don't know. Maybe they can. Maybe they can. It all depends on how the family has saved. But, right, because a lot of families cannot do that, right? I don't really bring them up, or I just bring them up as simple examples to show why it is not possible. Okay. Now, takeaways, right? Really quickly, you have chances, don't throw them away. If you're in 11th grade and you haven't talked to me yet, we need to talk, right? Prepare early. Parents, there's still a little bit of time to kind of change the situation you're in just slightly. So if we can talk before the end of the year, great. If not, don't worry about it too much, right? And again, make sure to set up a time to talk to us soon, right? The one thing that I ask is that families just talk to us, right? Whether I can actually help you or not, well, I need to have a conversation, right? But I actually have found that a lot of people that feel like they can't get any help or any financial aid, they end up coming to our consultation, seeing that there are and then see that there are opportunities for their family, and then we're able to save them money, right? When they never thought they could, right? So if you have questions, reach out on Facebook, Discord, email, right, during our trainings, right? But don't go into this blind, right? Make sure that before you fill out anything, before you turn in anything, you talk to us so that we can help you guys through the process. Okay. So again, I always go through these results, but families that make over 300, we're getting them money, 30, $40,000. 400, this family got $42,000. This family, just over 200, they got $30,000 out of UC, right? So we are here to help. So do not shy away. We are here to help, right? Unfortunately, my birthday discount is gone, right? But we always try to have a early bird discount if you sign up within the first 72 hours. So we're holding on to that. But I do want to let you guys know we are going to have a price increase at the end of the year. Okay. So if you want to take advantage of kind of our current pricing, you would have to meet with me in the next 3 weeks. Okay. Oh, but it's actually not even 3 weeks because, well, we actually are taking our company is taking a break from starting on the 24th, right? So it's over the next 2 weeks. So if you want to meet with me before then, I'm sure we can find a time, whether it's super early, whether it's super late, we will find a time for you. But the best way to do that would be to send me an email so that we can set you up in our schedule. Okay. So I am going to put our email into the chat here so that, sorry, I'm going to type this out real quick. So that you guys can email me if you guys want to set up a time, right? If you use that QR code, you're not going to find a time until probably January, okay? So make sure that you find a time so that we can make sure to talk to you, tell you what your opportunities are, and also lock you in at this year's pricing, not 2026. Okay. But I always love to open it up for questions at the end as well. So if you guys do have questions, please let me know in the Q&A or in the chat, and then we can answer those, and then I can send you guys on your way. Okay. I try to keep these trainings as short and simple as possible so that you guys can retain the information. I've done longer trainings that are an hour, but it's just too much for families to kind of soak all that in, right? So if there are topics that you guys are curious about, right? One of the big things that I always talk about with families, and I just talked about it with a family today, they're like, "Oh yeah, my friend told me to open up a 529," and I said, "Stop," right? So if you do have a 529, we should probably talk about how to kind of like get around that because the 529 actually hurts you and has a negative impact on how much money you can get from colleges. Okay. All right. So I'll do last call for questions. All right. No questions today. Seems like it was straight and to the point. Everyone understood. But I'm going to leave this up real quick so that you guys can kind of, get the phone number and the email in the chat, right? And then go ahead and do that. It says, how does the CSS profile treat second homes that don't produce income? Well, here's the thing. Even if they don't produce income, there's still equity in those homes, right? So it's a negative that we have to deal with, right? So that's something that we should also talk about as well, right? But your family home, your rental home, those are all, while they don't produce any income, you're paying your mortgage, right? So if you pay your mortgage, you're building the equity, which in the eyes of colleges, well, that looks like, hey, you got kind of like you're building kind of like you're kind of just saving money in your safe, right? That's how it looks like to them. Is 529 considered a student asset? It is not considered a student asset, right? The problem with the 529 is that there is a specific question that asks you if you have a 529 for your student. Let's say that you have $100,000 in a 529, right? How the colleges look at your $100,000 bar of money is that, oh, I can chop it into 4 blocks, right? And out of those 4 blocks, I can take $25,000 a year. Now, let's say the school was gonna give you $30,000 a year to go to school, right? They saw that your family needed $30,000, but you guys had saved $100,000. We divide that by 4, it's $25,000. Once they see that, the college will reduce their aid from $30,000 to $5,000. Add in your $25,000 from your 529 so that the net effect of all the financial aid that you're getting is $30,000, right? Now, is that fair? No, it's not fair, right? But that's what happens. Okay. So it is not considered a student asset. It is a parent asset, right? But the colleges look at the total amount in your 529, divide by 4, and think that that is what can be used for college expenses. Okay. Of course, of course. All right. Is there value in getting home equity loans to increase cash outflow? No. Maybe I'm misunderstanding this question. So the colleges don't actually care about cash expenses. They care about the money coming into your account. So if you get a home equity loan, right, it's not really going to change you're just taking the equity out of your home, right? So that's just going to be another loan payment for you with interest. So it's not really going to help your situation, right? Again, outflow is not really what they're looking at. They're just looking at the money that hits your account. Uh, does the primary residence equity, is that considered an asset? So, yes and no. It depends on what form the school asks for. If the school is just looking for just looking for the FAFSA, your primary residence equity will not be considered. Okay. But if you're applying to mostly private schools that do look at equity, right, on the CSS, right, then yes, technically, are they supposed to consider it? No. But they have questions about, do you own your home, right? If you say yes, then you have to answer questions about your mortgage payment and how much equity you have. So yes, they will consider that, right? So again, if finances are like kind of like a big factor in your student going to college, right? Then you need to be a little bit more careful about the colleges that you choose, right? All right. Thank you guys for those questions. I think that's it, unless I'm missing something. All right, perfect. So again, I'm going to leave this up so you guys can text us. Also, the email is also in the chat here, right? Email us, text us, right? The QR code is the worst way to do it because it's not going to book you until January. But if you guys can, reach out so that we can talk to you before the end of the year. Okay. Last question, and then we'll kind of end off here. It says, if the income from 2 years before was much higher, but now parental income is reduced, is there anywhere to put that on the FAFSA or on applications? No, there isn't, right? So again, that's a more complicated situation, which I do suggest that you come in for a consultation for. But the FAFSA will look at the critical tax year, which is the one that from 2 years before. If your situation has changed dramatically, and when I mean dramatically, like your income went from $200,000 to like $20,000, or like there's been a huge difference, right? Then yes, there is a way to do it, but it wouldn't be on the actual forms. It would be with the individual colleges that you apply to and a special circumstance or appeal form that you would turn in. Okay. All right, so I'm going to leave this up real quick. If you guys do have questions, please reach out to us. We're happy to answer questions for you guys. Obviously the holiday season is coming upon us, but don't forget, this is very critical for your student as well. Okay, so I'll leave this up. Emails in the chat. If you guys have any other questions, let us know, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.